I'm Mike Belsito, co-founder of eFuneral, and we want to talk for a few minutes about what to do when somebody dies. Now, a lot of times people are in that situation where a loved one dies. They might even be in the room with them, and it's really a stressful time, understandably so, and because of that, people sometimes don't know exactly what to do. So we want to share some of these tips, if you will, on what you can do if you're in that situation. And this will help you be prepared if you are in that moment. The first thing that you should do is call the appropriate individuals. And what I mean by that is if your loved one's in hospice, that might be a hospice nurse. If they're in the hospital, it might be a doctor or a nurse. If they're at home, it might be 911. But somebody has to know about it immediately. And those would be the types of groups that you'll want to make that first call to. Very soon after, within minutes, you'll want to contact a funeral home. Now, sometimes people know exactly which funeral home they want to work with, and if you already know that, that's great because you've already made that decision. That's something that you don't have to think about when you're in that time. Call them. Call that person. If you haven't chosen a funeral home, certainly a service like ours helps you find a funeral home. Online, you can find great information on specific contact details for funeral homes and such. But ultimately, you're going to need to contact somebody. So at that point, make sure that you do contact a funeral home. Now, those are the two things you need to do absolutely right away. In terms of what to do next, you're going to want to contact family members that need to know. These would be very close family members. And in fact, one of those people, maybe you can assign the task of contacting the rest of the family or friends and family that you might want to invite to a memorial service or a funeral service. That doesn't all have to be on you, but what you're going to want to do is at least contact the close individuals that need to know at that instant. The other thing that you're going to want to do is start thinking about writing an obituary for that person. Now, your funeral director can help you with this. There's also tips online that can help you as well. In fact, in a blog post that we've written on this subject, you can see some ideas for what to do to write an obituary. So that's something you're going to want to start to think about as well. Next thing, almost immediately after, is you need to contact your loved one's attorney, accountant, executive of their estate, basically the professionals that you've hired to really handle all of the details about this person's life. They need to know right away. There's certain things that they need to disclose to certain groups and organizations. So make sure that those individuals know about the death as well. One of the other things that you should also do is contact your loved one's employer if they're still working. It's something not everybody thinks about, but certainly they will need to and want to know when that situation's happen as well. At some point very soon, you should contact Social Security. There's the Social Security's office. Their phone number is written in the blog post that we've posted on this subject as well, but that's another important organization to contact. In terms of obtaining death certificates, you're actually going to want quite a few death certificates. There's certain groups that will need those death certificates, especially when you talk about insurance companies and things like that. So make sure that you obtain, usually between 5 to 10, sometimes even 20 death certificates will be sufficient. It will vary on a case-to-case basis, and that's something that your funeral director should be able to help you with. But speaking of insurance companies, if there's any insurance companies that you're currently working with, they absolutely need to know as well. If it's applicable, contact the VA, a Veterans Administration. If your loved one was in fact a veteran, it's another group that will need to know as well. And then there's things about your loved one's home, such as the utility companies, right? That's another group of companies that sometimes get forgotten in this situation, but they will also need to know, so that's somebody that you should contact. If there's no surviving spouse, there's certain things like subscriptions to magazines and newspapers, and that's not something you have to worry about right away, but certainly eventually those types of companies will need to get contacted as well. And any kind of credit card issuers, all things that essentially your loved one has subscribed to, those companies will need to know. And at that point, you should also make a inventory of personal belongings that the person has. And the executor of the person's estate we'll be able to, maybe even handle that, but eventually that will need to get done. So again, you could read our blog at efuneral.com/resources. There's a post written on this which shares some information. We share some links as well that we hope you'll find to be helpful. And for other videos like this, you could log on to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/efuneralresources.